Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to share with you my newest build creation, the character that I personally think has the most potential to become my favorite early access character, because there is not going to be any kind of changes, so everything is going to stay the same. And honestly, I have played a lot of characters. If I go to my character selection screen, right, we have like a 93 Archmage, 89 Deadeye, 81 Deadeye, a 91 Invoker, then a Pathfinder that I wanted to level, I think it was like Decompose, then my Witch Hunter. We have like another 88 Deadeye, a 97 Gemling, we have Blood Mage with a 90 Warbringer, a Witch, like, I think after like close to 600 hours of playing different characters and different build variations, from like Spark, Attribute Stacker, as I said before, the Decomposed boots, I played Frenzy, Spiral, Arrow, I played like Ice Strike, Invoker, like so many different things, and I pretty much figured out the kind of like core items that I want to play around, which is, for example, the Queen of the Forest, an attack-based build because of Herald, and so on and so forth. But before we're gonna go into any detail what this build is, how does it work together, what is the synergizes between the skill tree, the jewels and stuff like that, I want to give you guys a little bit of a taste in a mapping scenario. This character is completely fresh. It has like 16 hours played. It hasn't died a single time yet, but this might change in the next map, we're gonna see. And basically, long story short, this is a crit Lightning Arrow CI Deadeye, stacking intelligence, dexterity, and evasion rating for a Queen of the Forest for movement speed. Because in my humble opinion, there is like three kind of like builds that you can make fast, right? Thing is, going fast is the most fun, like 35% movement speed on your boots or something like that, with a couple of points on the tree that give you actually movement speed. You get to like maybe 40, maybe 50%, but that kind of feels slow. So you have like the adorned version with like 80-90% movement speed, but only if you have like a really good adorned, like 100%, and then stacking movement speed jewels. You have the Temporalis Blink, and the best option in my opinion is just Queen of the Forest. In my opinion, nothing feels better than just moving around fast, and this is not really min-maxed whatsoever. And I'm only having with my Tailwind up, I think like somewhere 85% movement speed right now. These can get up to over 200%, 250%, but the thing is, it's just based on how you enjoy this kind of like movement speed style, because at the end of the day, I tried with 150% movement speed and it kind of felt too fast for me. So I think like 100% roundabout is kind of the sweet spot. But with this build, I can basically adjust the stats how I want to do. I want to have more speed, I go more dexterity, evasion kind of style. If I want to be slower, I'm going more into intelligence for more flat damage, and so on and so forth. Anyways, before we're gonna go into the details, let me quickly see if we have like a nice map. Forge kinda sucks, Crypt sucks as well. What is this? Augury sucks, Ravine. What is Ravine? Ravine. I don't know. I have no idea what Ravine is, but it's a corrupted map, so it is going to be +1. So we're just gonna throw in a tier 16. So this is a T17 map. Just as the first showcase. There is not going to be bossing stuff quite yet, because, as I said, I just leveled this character up today. I throw it together, or at least I put the items together. I think I'm not even basically all res capped. I think I'm missing a little bit of lightning res, so it's just like the first showcase. But this is the classic farming stuff that you would do. This is a daily map with currently 138 quantity, 135 rarity, T17 with a bunch of modifiers. So I think for mapping showcase, that should be quite fine for the first glance. I want to say up front, this is not a budget build, okay? In fact, to get this build going, you probably need over 100 divines, just because it plays around the Timeless Jewel. They cost like 40 exalts or 40 divines or something. It's Hands of Wisdom in action, which is also a couple divines, right? Queen of the Forest is also a couple divines, so I can safely say at least 100 divines. So just that you are aware of that this is not like a budget build. This is not a League starter build. This is an end game build, right? Quite frankly, the League is out now since, or Early Access out now since like 47 days, over 1.5 months, and I think after that kind of time frame, and as I said, like close to 600 hours into the game. I think it's quite fine to work on my probably last early access build, unless this build turns out to be shit, which I don't believe. But for me, personally, like, I really enjoy the movement speed, the clearing speed, you know, with Lightning Arrow, with the Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, going lots of lightning and cold damage to have, like, nice freeze chain reactions, and once the monster density packs up, you clear entire screens. I'm also running this with Fork, so I'm shooting 5 arrows, plus the Fork, plus Heralds. It's just, the clear is just insane, and as I said before, this can be a lot faster, but I'm gonna find out in the upcoming days on how I wanna, how you say, min-max the build to my personal liking. And I want to make this clear here. For me, my build has to work, you know, and I'm min-maxing it the way I enjoy it the most, right? I am not planning to make this the most damage ever, the fastest character, the tankiest character, the most, you know, single target, 1 second boss kill. I think actually this build could probably kill any boss in less than a second. But in the end of the day, I want to have a good build, you know, a build where I think this is the best that I can make a build, you know. Everybody has, like, their own pros and cons about builds, you know. Somebody says, yo, that's still, like, too slow for a queen build. The other one likes to have more clear, more damage, whatever. But, you know, it's PoE, everybody can make their character the way they want to. So, but yeah, Ravine, not the best map, but I think just for running around and just killing some monsters, it's like almost everything is a one-shot. And there is a bunch of things that I found out, basically over the course of the last couple of weeks, and the map is clear. I'm gonna loot it later, obviously, because I don't want to make this like too long, but 2 monsters remaining, I don't know which ones survived somewhere. As I said, gonna loot this later. So, where do we start this entire thing? I would say let's start with, I mean, the Queen of the Forest thingy, I already explained. Why do I enjoy Queen of the Forest the most? It is just like, I don't like Blink, and I don't think it's gonna survive next patch. Queen of the Forest most likely will survive, right? All the other ways with, like, you know, what do you say, Adorn setup and stuff like that is just ridiculously expensive. I'm not saying this one is cheap, but you get the idea, right? Just movement speed always felt the best. Imperial 1 it did, and Imperial 2 it's the same. I don't like to have like movement skills to move around. I just want to have a speedy character so backtracking doesn't feel as bad, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's why we play around the Queen. Why CI? This is the next point that I want to discuss here, because this is more of a theory crafting video, since I just put this character together, just to give you guys the idea, the thought process on why did I make the stuff that I plan to work on, right? So we have life, we have ES, and we have mana. Mana in terms of Eldritch Battery, Mind of a Matter mana stacking. ES, just the way I do it here, and life, I mean, life is life. There is like no real thing to talk about. Thing though is, I think life builds are by far the weakest builds. There are life builds that play with the Aether's Disdain to get like a bunch of like extra energy shield for an extra tankiness layer, but in my opinion, chaos damage is the worst damage in this game. There is lots of random ass chaos damage, also like very dangerous mods with like damage as extra chaos. Then you have like the chaos volatiles, the explodey things, right? You have maps that have like chaos degen floors and so on and so forth, and it just freaking sucks. A normal life build, I would say about 2,500 life with like all good life modifiers on your gear, because there is barely any percent life on the tree. So the only thing that you can really do is to go like strength stacking for a decent life pool, let's say 5, 6, 7,000. Let's do the salt, clear, D&D. Energy Shield takes away all this stuff, right? We are now immune to chaos damage. It doesn't matter what it says over here, right? This also has the added benefit that that you don't need to spend any suffix to get chaos res capped. And furthermore, you're immune to chaos damage, which is really, really freaking good. We can also take something like the spaghettification for minus chaos resistance, because we don't care about those things, right? Furthermore, we have the Eternal Youth Keystone, which says life recharges instead of energy shield, and life recovery from flask applies to energy shield instead. So this way, our life flask is not useless. We are just having now a life-based build with a life flask, just it's now called energy shield. And the good thing is about energy shield, in the current version, you cannot get bleeding and you're immune to poison because it's chaos damage, so it's also good. And you have something like Grim Feast, which is probably something that a lot of people know already, which is basically you kill monsters, you soak up these little, souls, basically, and you can get up to double your ES pool. So in mapping, I'm running around almost with 6,000 energy shield, plus being immune to chaos, plus still having a life flask that works for energy shield now. So what is the reason of going live? You know, it just freaking sucks. This one is way better. Mana stacking, I think, is still like one of the best, but the thing is, like, mana stackers have the problem with like stun and freeze, and here once I level this one higher, we're currently level 88, so it's really fresh. I want to go Icebreaker, so we gain 100% maximum ES as additional freeze threshold, so we shouldn't be able to get stunned all that often. And then there is like, maybe I'm gonna opt in for stun threshold or something like that. Maybe run a stun jewel, a charm basically. But as you saw in the mapping aspect, right, everything dies if I just look at it, so I don't really see the point of trying to get stun immunity. I think freeze can hit you like randomly from like any freeze projectile or something. Good. So that's the reason why I want to go CI. So now is the problem, you are running an evasion chest. Why would you go CI? You know, CI, you want to stack energy shield, you want to stack or mana as extra ES or something like that. You know, we don't have that. But there is a few keystones that make this actually not that bad. Here we have the Spectral Ward, which says 1 to maximum energy shield per 12 evasion rating on equipped body armor. So the Queen, having like, mine has like 965, it's not a lot, but it helps, right? 965 divided by 12, so at least gives me like 80 flat ES, that is then gonna get increased by modifiers to increased evasion rating, like energy shield, like here on the Patient Barrier, for example. Then we have an insanely big ES helmet, which is really good. Like, this helmet alone gives me like 1,000, like basically almost doubles my ES pool just by equipping this 450 ES helmet, right? But this is not an evasion helmet, and therefore it kind of sucks for Queen of the Forest, right? Yeah. Unless we have something on the tree which is called the subterfuge mask that I get here with a Megalomaniac, right? Which says +2 evasion rating per 1 maximum energy shield on equipped helmet, which basically means this helm has 450 energy shield, but also counts as having 904 flat evasion rating, which is then helping us a ton by getting like lots of evasion rating for increasing the movement speed of our Queen of the Forest. The only difference here is the booty slot, right? I decided to go with an ES base just because I want to have a somewhat decent ES pull to begin with, because if I would take evasion boots, it would scale my Queen better, right? But without those boots, I'm having 2,000 ES, so these boots alone give me like 1,000 ES, so I thought this is like the better version, right? From our evasion chest, we now get energy shield. From our energy shield helmet, we now get evasion. This is just the one spot where I said just going a lot of energy shield just feels a lot better. And if I would like to get more ES, I'm not sure in the end game, like I think I'm gonna have way too much damage, right? So I might just scrap like a bunch of like crit notes or something and go more like on the bottom side here with the Essence of Storm, Essence of Mountain, and then go up here for some crit notes plus ES, ES, and ES over here, and just this combination basically gets me up to like 4,500 energy shield or something like that. I could also probably take the points away from the top side here and maybe anoint something like Patient Barrier, because 60% max ES is really freaking insane, and we don't care really about the energy shield recharge. But this is all about like this, you know, you PUB it, you test it, you see how it actually feels like, and then you go back to PUBing, and then you do it like rinse and repeat basically, right? Good. Back to the Queen of the Forest. There is something, you want to have a lot of evasion rating, right? And I want to build this together with the Hands of Wisdom in action, because obviously these gloves are the best in slot for pretty much every attack-based build, right? Not even if you like intelligence stacking. I'm currently having like only 250 intelligence, but this still gives me like so freaking much flat damage that this is, no matter what attack-based build you play, these are your best in slot gloves. Obviously for an attribute stacker they are worth a lot more, but for my build it has a different purpose as well, because now I can scale intelligence for actually scaling my damage, but I can also scale my movement speed with intelligence. And the keyword here is a timeless jewel, which is the heroic tragedy that by the line of Allrod, which converts your keystone into the Black Sky training, which says intelligence inherent bonus is 1% increased evasion rating per 2 intelligence instead. So basically, instead of mana per intelligence, I'm now getting percent evasion rating per intelligence, right? And what does percent evasion rating do for our build? Exactly, it gives us movement speed. So now with scaling intelligence, we get flat damage and percent movement speed and also defense because of a very high evasion count. I mean, obviously 25k is not a lot right now, but there's a bunch of modifiers that will affect that. For example, Tailwind. So if I just randomly shoot around, you know, I'm just like increasing my evasion rating every time I shoot and so on and so forth. And we're going to build in more. I think like I plan to go like 50, 60,000 evasion rating. I think that should be fair enough to have a very fast build. But as I said before, I could always go ahead and just scale more points into evasion rating. For example, remove this dex node and take these 2 nodes over here, and I have another 30% increased evasion rating, right? I could go over here for freedom of movement for even another 60% evasion rating when I dodge roll, right? So there is plenty of ways to get increased evasion rating and therefore movement speed if I want to, if I feel like the build is not fast enough, right? Good. That is the item combination with intelligence and dexterity stacking. I decided to go 225 dexterity exactly to equip my bow, which needs 212. But since we're having the Falcon technique over here, we get a 1% increased attack speed per 15 dexterity, which means if my bow needs 212, or I think it was 212, divided by 15, I would get 14% increased attack speed, right? It's a point, so I would go to the next step, so it's 15 times 15, it's 225, so that means for me, I want to try to get 225 dexterity to reach the next 1% attack speed breakpoint, because dexterity also gives accuracy, and now, once we get more levels and better gear and stuff like that, we're gonna spend more and more and more points into intelligence. Which brings me to the next thing. I think, like, wait a second, let me quickly see if there is anything else that I need to talk about before we go into the gear and skill tree sections for the mechanics. I think we're pretty much set with all of that. Good. Let's talk about the, do we do skill tree first, gems first, equipment first? I think we're going to start with the equipment. So, one thing I learned that was pretty new for me is a lot of builds early on said crit definitely sucks. And here I'm basically having, even though I'm missing like a bunch of crit nodes, like the next couple of levels are going to be True Strike, it's going to be Deadly Force, then we're going to take here a Throat Seeker and so on. And I'm going to be 100% critical strike chance for Lightning Arrow in Hideout, just because I need to reach like 50%, which I'm basically pretty close. I think I'm like 45%, but I'm running this with Ambush, which means I get like double the crit chance on targets on full life, and when I'm mapping, I just want to shoot like a bunch of Lightning Arrows, right? And if it hits the target, it basically has a 100% chance to crit, and therefore will basically just one-shot the monster. For single target, Ambush is useless, but there we use Lightning Rod instead, right? So what is the interesting part about the increased critical damage bonus on a bow or on a weapon in general, right? So the way the calculations works, you have a base and then you have your increased or more modifiers, right? So when you increase the base damage of something, the increased modifiers will be a lot better, right? And this is exactly what this here does. So there are modifiers like here on my amulet, it says increased critical damage bonus. On the weapon, it says 2 critical damage bonus. What that basically means that normally a build has 100% critical strike critical damage bonus. 100% is the base, okay? But if you have this on a weapon, it starts to add to the base, okay? So this one has like, what is it, 53% increased, so 29 plus the 24 of the sockets. So my base critical damage bonus is 154, which then all my other increased damage modifiers are basically adding up to. Which leads you up to, if you would have like sick gear with Adorned, you can get like 1500% critical damage multiplier, okay? So the same with the critical strike chance here, we have modifiers increase critical strike chance, but on the weapon, it's 2 critical strike chance. 2 does always mean it's added to the base, while increased is basically increasing that base damage, right? So my bow has like 9.3% base crit strike chance, so all the increased critical strike chance increases are basically multiplying by this, like, my base crit strike chance, right? And this is the reason why we're getting so high crit damage modifiers, and that's why I think crit is definitely the way better thing to go in a sort of an end game. Okay, if I would go early game budget league starter, I would not go crit, and I would just go down to lightning rod, because this is like really good for damage early on, because your lightning damage with non-critical hits is lucky, right? So you just don't have to worry about crit too much, because you need a bow with a good base crit. You want to have this base crit multiplier, and then with all the other crit damage scaling, you're gonna get a lot more damage, but it is very pricey. Because for me, the perfect suffixes on this bow is crit hit chance, crit damage bonus, and additional arrows. So this bow alone gives me 3 arrows, then I have 1 from my lightning shot, and I'm a Deadeye, so that means I get +1 here as well. So I'm shooting 5 arrows, and if I want to, which is in my opinion not really needed, I could still use scatter shot, so I have 2 additional, which would make 7 lightning arrow projectiles, plus the chaining, plus heralds. It's so freaking much overkill when it comes to the mapping aspect. But then on the prefixes, physical damage, this is like a 350 bow, but don't underestimate it, right? I paid 280 divines for this bow, and you might call me crazy. Why would you pay so much currency for a bow that has 350 DPS? And the reason is the suffixes. I can show you that real quick on the trade, so you see what we are talking about. First of all, I said I want to have a lot of base projectiles, right? So I have like 5 over here. Why is that? It's better for clearing, and it's better for single target, because every time I use my lightning rod, I'm getting additional projectiles, right? So I can stack these up like way faster, way stronger, and they're gonna do hilarious, like millions of DPS. So every projectile helps clearing and single target, and is a more damage multiplier in that case. So I think this is like the one stat that I'm not going to talk about, right? Or at least that I'm not negotiating about. 2 additional arrows. So if I just go, I want to have like a dual string bow. Let's put it this way. Additional arrow over here on the implicit, right? So now we're gonna delete those modifiers. So now the bow should have crit hit chance, crit damage bonus, and 2 arrows on an implicit arrow, right? And we're having 7 bows here. And if I check for all, we have 31 bows. Okay, this is expert bases, these are normal bases, advanced bases, all of those, right? 31 on and offline, and if we check by DPS, there is 1 mirror bow basically, which is not even perfect, but it's just so hard to hit. And then we have like something like 365 for 5 divines 9 hours ago. Wait a second, that is actually really good, but it has like a very low base crit with 2%. Here is 1%, so just hitting this like triple suffix, this is like a really good bow here. So this is like additional arrows with good amount of crit damage, critical strike chance, but it has 270 DPS minus like 350. That kind of explains the price, but as you see, just the additional arrows is adding so much damage, which is just not displayed on the DPS part on the bow. Quiver, a visceral quiver with increased critical strike for attacks, crit damage, projectile speed, increased damage with bow skills, and so on and so forth. In a better version, this would have cold damage on the prefixes and attack speed instead of like life in enemy per enemy killed. But one thing here is the increased projectile speed, and there is a note over here which says feathered fletching, increase and reductions to projectile speed also apply to damage with bows, which is an insanely good modifier because we also have this over here. For example, I have here 10% projectile damage, but here I have double projectile speed, which is less damage than this one, unless I have like this projectile speed, and now it adds basically 8% increased damage on top of that, on top of the projectile speed, which is pretty much insane. For the helmet, a lot of energy shield, intelligence, rarity, resistance, whatever you can get, right? Same on the boots over here. The simple rule here: energy shield, rarity, int, resistance, just to get you basically capped. I don't have movement speed on my boots because my Queen of the Forest says other modifiers to movement speed do not apply. So this is basically these movement speed notes, the 3% over here does not count. I took this note for the 30% evasion, that counts for my Queen of the Forest basically. For the amulet, I wanted to have some form of spirit. I think if you reach 55 spirit, it would be perfect. Because of Wind Dancer, because of Grim Feast, I'm ready having your precision, clarity, herbalism. Herbalism is just something that my flask actually recovers more. Then clarity helps a little bit with mana sustain, and precision is nice to have, but on end game not really needed if you have a lot of decks. So basically you can get away with like I think we say 30, 60, 120 basically, right? So yeah, it's like 20 spirit on your amulet and you should be fine, right? Then I picked for energy shield and increased energy shield. I could instead pick evasion rating, but I think with all the intelligence scaling later on, we're gonna have like 5, 6, 700% increased evasion rating, so adding like 50% extra is not really too insane, but the increased energy shield definitely helps for the survivability. Crit hit chance, crit damage bonus, resistance, whatever you need. Same for the rings, flat damage, evasion rating, very, very important. I have 2 rings here with the highest roll of evasion rating goes up to 203 because we don't really have too many sources of flat evasion rating. You know, my Hand of Wisdom has like nothing or a 60 evasion rating. My helm basically gets doubled, but my boots don't give anything, belt and so on doesn't give anything, so we really need this evasion rating. This line with almost 300, just to see how much this one gives me, so I'm going from 21,000 to 25,000. So this is just 4,000 evasion rating, just because it has 297. This doesn't even count in Tailwind and stuff like that, right? So really, really insane, good mod here. Because other than that, mana I don't need, life I don't need, I'm running CI, so evasion rating is by far the best mod. In the best case scenario for rings, I would like to have these prefixes, cold damage, lightning damage, and evasion rating, and I would like to have these suffixes, which is all attributes, all resistance, and rarity, right? So it's basically a mix. Ingenuity basically just makes your rings better, we don't have to talk about that. The Hand of Wisdom in action, obviously attack speed per 25 dexterity, and the 1 to 12 lightning damage per 10 intelligence. This is also a reason why I wanted to go for the 225 dexterity, because of the next breakpoints of my Hand of Wisdom in action, right? Good, that is about the gear, and the mana flask is obviously the most broken thing in the entire game anyways. For this build, not as much, but for, yeah, mana stackers and stuff. Good, let's talk about the skill tree. So we are Deadeye, we have the Tailwind, we have less damage taken per Tailwind if we get hit. We have here the Far Shot here just for clearing aspect, and the additional arrow, which is super nice. Going over here with a bunch of like evasion rolls. Effect of quiver, very important, because the better you quiver, the more damage you're gonna do. It's gonna scale your damage, your bow skills, your projectile speed, which also refers to projectile damage because of feathers fletching. Then we get crit hit chance, crit damage bonus, and so on and so forth. Really, really insane. I have here on my first jewel slot, I have Controlled Metamorphosis with a large ring, which basically lets me get Bestial Skin for 100% increased evasion rating from equipped body armor, Dexterity, the attack speed mod, some extra evasion rating, and here main one hit and the attack damage. Then over here, the second jewel, like my jewels are basically all looking like the same. Crit hit chance, crit damage multi, bonus from a quick quiver, and then something useful on top of that. Here is Magnitude of Ailments. Here we have increased evasion rating, also very, very nice. Then one here is also increased evasion rating for our Queen of the Forest. Here we have some accuracy with bows. So all of these is like kind of nice to have, but crit hit, I would say the most important is the increased bonus from quiver, followed by the critical damage, then crit hit chance, and then something other useful that you can get. Then it's not an attribute stack, I want to make this clear. Yes, the more intelligence you have, the better. The more dexterity you have, the better. But we're not running a Pillar of the Cage God where you get insane damage scaling out of intelligence with the increased AoE, with the double dipping, with the Hands of Wisdom. We just try to get as much as we can for the flat damage, but it's not something where you say, this has to be attribute notes, because these notes over here, increased ally damage with attacks, the physical damage taken from hits, I just think these kind of like damage notes are a lot better, right? Then here we have my Megalomaniac with the Subterfuge Forge, saves me a lot of skill points. Then crit notes, Herald notes, I have Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, so I'm getting like double 50% increased damage on this part. And my damage is kind of like 50% cold, 50% lightning, so pretty much, because I get a lot of lightning damage over here, but all the rest I try to get as much as cold damage as possible, as well as on this jewel with the extra cold damage, because it helps my Herald of Ice chain reactions, because I have more cold damage. More cold damage means easier freeze build up, easier shattering, easier chain explosions, right? Then going up here with the Eternal Youth and the Spectral Ward that we already talked, crit notes, crit notes, crit notes. This is like a very cool spot. So here we have basically Cold and Lightning Pen, and as I just said, we have like 50-50 damage, so very strong. Here the same thing, double pen. Here we have shock duration or chill duration, magnitude of chill and shock you inflict, and on top of that I'm running here and Against the Darkness with percent intelligence and damage is extra cold. As I said, this hits like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, potentially 7, 8, and 9. So this is like a 4-pointer here for double this effect, right? But the thing is, like, I'd rather spend those 4 points in more crit. I need to like POB this in the end if these 4 points are actually worth it. But this is like a very, very freaking good cluster. I tested this with double like damage is extra cold and damage is extra lightning in POB. But in the end of the day, the increased intelligence is a little bit worse damage. But guess what? Intelligence gives me increased evasion rating gives me defense and movement speed, and more flat damage. So it's always like good to have intelligence. If you're starved for dex, you can also go for dexterity instead of intelligence, and so on. Good. Moving up here, Heavy Frost and Thin Ice both have like increased freeze buildup, makes it easier to have like big chain reactions with the Herald of Ice, Chaos Inoculation, and so on, plus the Heroic Strategy with the All Wrath for the Black Sky training, as we said before. Good, this is about the skill tree. Let's take a look about the gems. So, I have here Lightning Arrow, Martial Tempo, Long Shot, Fork, Primal Element, and Ambush. As I said, this is my clearing skill. Ambush here, double crit strike chance, and you basically just one-shot pretty much everything, right? Then we have Lightning Rod. This is my single target. Basically, how I do my single target, I put down my Orb of Storms, and I spam my Lightning Rods, right? The monster gets active, and then we have a chain reaction, because if I go for Uber Bosses, I deactivate my Heralds, and I use Cast on Shock. What happens here is I have here Ball Lightning with the lowest amount of mana possible. So I got a level, this is a level 11 base skill, right? So we are level 11, and I corrupted it down to level 10, so it has less mana cost. Why is that? Because this is this is for triggering, right? So what this happens is I need to shoot Lightning Rod, and then when I use a lightning skill, this thing is like kind of like exploding, right? So in the Orb of Storm, as you see, it's just like zapping around until it's like gone, right? So I have down my orb, and I shoot those lightning rods. So the orb will activate my lightning rods, but the lightning rods will shock the enemy and will load up my Cast on Shock, which will release a ball lightning. And the ball lightning will fly over my lightning rods, activating those again, and then creating like an infinite loop of like Cast on Shock, activate lightning rods, they will shock, Cast on Shock, ball lightning, and so on and so forth. And once, like in the update video, once we're gonna do some bosses, you're gonna see that my frames are going to drop down to like 5% or something, just because there is like a bazillion ball lightnings and explosions happening, and therefore doing a bazillion damage. But just as an explanation, but we need to get the Orb of Storms here going for the initial burst damage, right? So back to the gem setup here. When we are close combat, Scatter Shot, Lightning Pen, Cold Pen, and Conk Effect, Orb of Storms with Chain, Unleash, Font of Mana, Font of Rage, and Persistence. So if I'm standing next to my Orb of Storm here, I'm getting Rage. Rage gives me more attack damage, more damage. Then I have here Herald of Ice with Lightning Infusion, Conduction, Innovate, Overcharge, and Magnified Effect. Herald of Thunder with Cold Infusion, Glaciation, Ice Bite, Lightning Mastery, and Frost Nexus. So what is the plan? Herald of Ice cannot freeze. Herald of Thunder cannot shock. So what we do is we swap them around. So we're gonna do our Herald of Ice, which is our Cold Herald, to do lightning damage. So we infuse it with lightning damage and give it a chance to shock. On Herald of Thunder, we do the opposite. We're gonna convert my Herald of Thunder into cold damage, or adding cold damage, with freeze buildup and Ice Bite. Forget about Ice Bite, is just for basically buffing me once this chain reaction goes off. But basically, Herald of Ice becomes lightning infused with conduction to shock. Shock goes off, Herald of Thunder goes off, kills enemies with Glaciation, builds up freeze, triggers Herald of Ice, and this is like a chain loop where we basically can get this like huge explosions. Innovate is just giving me extra lightning damage, and Ice Spot extra cold damage. Then we have Overcharge and Magnified Effect for more AoE, and on Herald of Thunder we have Lightning Mastery and Frost Nexus. Cast and Shock, Ball Lightning, as I said, lowest level possible, Impetus, Energy Retention, Inspiration, and Deceleration. Then we have Conductivity. I put this down for bosses with the Heightened Curse, Curse Ground, and Realistic Curse. So basically, a boss spawns, you know, I'm preparing my arrows, and right before it is active, Orb of Storms plus Ritual Curse, and then we're just basically blasting away with like shit tons of stuff. Then we have Wind Dancer with Blind, Maim, and Pin support, and Grim Feast with Precision, Clarity, and Herbalism. Good, that is the skill setup. I explained how my AoE works, or my clearing works. I explained how my single target works. All my items, basically. I link a path of building in the description below with the current character, and I've done some adjustments here, right? Because a lot of things in path of building are currently not working, and what I mean by that is, for example, rage. So I can delete my rage, the damage stays the same. I put 30 rage in, it doesn't do anything. So what I have done here in my let me quickly pull this one up here. Let me see, what is that? Oh, it's my loot filter. So, this is what my config does, right? First of all, the Timeless Jewel doesn't work, right? So, it is over here, but it doesn't change the keystone. So, I added this -2 mana, which is basically your base intelligence scaling, and I added the increased evasion rating. Then, Rage, as I just said, wait, this should actually be 30%. Because we have 30 Rage max, and it gives 1% more attack damage per Rage. Then we have Far Shot. This is basically a Resonancy node. This doesn't really work. You can put in a configuration here, the distance of enemy, but it doesn't realize what's actually going on. I think if you put in 10 or plus, it actually counts as point blank, which is close to the enemy and stuff. So it's completely rigged, and if I disable Far Shot, as you see, nothing basically happens. So I added this 20% more damage for Far Shot over here, and then we have Long Shot, which is my support gem on my lightning arrow here. If I disable that, you see my damage is not changing. The only thing that's changing is my mana cost, because it also has a problem calculating the long shot, basically, the more damage, and 7 meters is about this range. So when I run around, kill monsters, they all die basically at the end of my screen, so way more. So that's why I have long shot on my clearing skill, which is 35% more attack damage. So this is the long shot over here. There is probably even more stuff not working, but I would say take this as just to see how the skill tree works, what gem setups I have, what items do I have, and so on and so forth, to get like a somewhat an overview what this build is like currently in the making, more or less. Good, let's talk about MTX real quick, because you're probably wondering what this is about. We have the complete Despair set here, so helmet, body armor Despair, gloves, boots, and the Despair wings with the Ravager weapon effect, the Astral portal effect, alternate Lunum dislike, whatever, I don't even have charges, and the cursor effect over here. So this is basically full Despair with the Ravager weapon. Good. Items explained, skill tree explained, gems explained, map showcase. Is there anything else? I hope not. Please let me know in the comments, and I would say let's do my summary and conclusion so far. Basically, I put all the elements that I found really cool in the game and tried to put it together in one character, and after the first day of mapping, I can just say, it is really freaking good. And I'm think like when Huntress and Druid and stuff like that comes out, especially Huntress, I think it's going to be similar than Deadeye, just with javelins or spears or something like that. And I can see a very similar itemization that what I'm currently doing and trying out to be somewhat very strong for upcoming classes. But the question is always like, what will change? You know, I don't think these gloves will survive. I don't think the Herald Explosion will survive. I don't think a lot of things will actually stay the way they are right now. But we're gonna see. But as of right now, this is going to be the build that I want to min-max as good as I can. It is already like very expensive, but the ceiling is never ending. In the best case scenario, you even run a door and have a mirrored bow, a mirrored quiver, which is basically quadrupling or giving you 10 times more damage than what I have currently. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you on the next video.